Thank you for joining us. I'm Dawn Bjork with K-Squared Technologies. Today's session is on Microsoft Word, tips and techniques everyone should know. We're going to dive into a wide range of Microsoft Word tips that will help you save time and to hopefully make things much easier for you as you're working with your Word projects, your Word documents. We'll start off, first of all, by looking at just a quick overview on understanding the way that Word formats our documents. Formatting is one of those areas that can be extremely frustrating. So I want to give you a quick overview of that. And certainly the more that we can customize Microsoft Word with shortcuts and other ways to do things more effectively, that will save time for us. There also is built-in automation. So we're going to look at how we can take advantage of the automation tools that are in Word and also how we can turn off those automation features that might be just more annoying and get in our way. And throughout, you'll see editing and formatting shortcuts, as well as navigation shortcuts. So let's first of all, very quickly, touch on some essential shortcuts that help you not only in Microsoft Word, but other Office programs. Well, we have a little bit of an issue with this, so I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead because here's a tip that has nothing to do with Word, has to do with PowerPoint, and that is that sometimes you need to make sure that you are embedding fonts. And so that's where we have a little bit of translation with that. But let's move then to look at understanding Word formatting. I break this out into 4 different categories: character or font, paragraph, page or document, and section formatting. So let's take a quick tour of what that means in Word. So character or font formatting, these are the font, style, size, color, everything from bold to saying that you want it to be red or 48 point. What's important to know about this is in Word, they said every single character, whether it's a letter, a number, a space, a punctuation, every single character stores its own formatting. So what that simply means is that, and you may have encountered this, you move to a space between 2 words, start typing, and suddenly it's a different size or different style, because every single character or position in that document has its own formatting. So this is just a quick reminder that as you are, for instance, perhaps applying formatting, that you make sure that you are selecting then exactly everything you want to apply that to. But no, that also gives you the flexibility to have very distinctive formatting throughout. The next level of formatting is paragraph formatting. And with that, these are things like line spacing, indents, bullets, numbering, alignment like center or left aligned. And why this is helpful to know is that the smallest unit that paragraph formatting can be applied to is what all the text that is preceded by a hard return. And we'll see a little bit about this as we start sharing some tips. That's why if you have something centered and you hit enter, it will also be centered. That is because that formatting is copied forward. This can also lead to some frustration in Word because if you already have existing text and you're editing, if you simply move down to maybe what might be a blank line, that line is storing the formatting that might have been from a previous paragraph or may have been applied not randomly, but distinctively. And so that's another thing to be paying attention to, is the fact that every single paragraph can have its own formatting and stores that in the paragraph mark. Now, more broadly, our documents have page or document formatting. So every document has at least one set of this formatting. This is our page size and orientation, headers and footers, page numbers, margins, things along those lines. Where we often will, and what I hear frequently in terms of people being frustrated with Word, is when you want something to change. Let's say you want to have a different header, or you want to change the page numbering, either the style or the number that it starts with. In that case, it doesn't matter where you are in the document. If you want to change the header, it would change the entire document, and that may not be what you want. And so understanding this will save you a lot of time in Word, because what that leads us to is something that you may need to work with, and that is section formatting. Now, understanding that every single document has at least one section, but sections serve as dividers, almost like fences, in that will say that that piece of property, your Word document. And so should you want any kind of change to that page or document formatting, this is where you want to have your section formats. So by putting in section breaks, then that is a way for you to be able to set up your document the way you want. Now, previously, we had a webinar on working with long documents where I move into and share more about this. So check that out on our YouTube channel and to find out more details about that. But I did want to touch on that because these tend to be some things that can certainly get in our way to be able to effectively work in Microsoft Word. Let's go hands-on then and dive right into Word and look at some things that might be helpful for us in terms of shortcuts and other options. And these include our navigation. So here I have a document that is 12 pages long. Now, how I know that is through my status bar. And so the status bar is at the bottom of the document. I'm going to simply change our view here just a little bit because I want you to be able to see that, and Zoom can sometimes cut these things up. So at the bottom here is my status bar. Now I've already added some features to that. So one of the tips to share with you is customizing your status bar. If you right click, for instance, in that status bar, you can see that we have some of this document information, and that is, for instance, our formatted page number, what section we're on, word count. If you want to see if cap lock is on, you might want to select that. That is, the check mark indicates which of these features are enabled. So if you are working with a lot of review or changes in your documents and work with track changes, you might want to enable that. This will display if track changes is turned on. So these are all things that will give us a little bit more information. Now in the document itself, if I want to move to different locations, you're probably familiar with some of these actions. For instance, to go to the end is Control and the End key, as in END, not N for that. Will, if you do Control N, that will give you a new document. So Control and the End key, or Control Home. So those are some quick ways to navigate and to move around. But if you want to go to a specific page, then that is Control G or Go To. You can hit your F5 function key for that as well. And if, for instance, I want to move to page 6, I'll type that in. I will mention here on the left-hand side, notice that in addition to pages, you could go to very specific things contained in your document. And so if you do have a complex document, you may want to move to a table, or you may want to move to a comment or a bookmark. In this case, though, I'll move to that page. I can either hit Enter or click on Go To. And if this is the page I want, then I'll go ahead and close. If I would like to move to another one, I'll enter that in and hit Enter and Go To. And so this is the idea, is that we're able to quickly navigate. And once we're where we want, we can close this. Now I can confirm that I've moved to that by looking once again at my status bar, which is giving me this information about the page that I'm on. And so this gives me some additional information. Additionally, now I also can go back to the last 3 places where I've moved. So that is Shift F5. Shift in the F5 function key is a go back. And so with Shift F5, well, let's try that again. There we go. Shift F5, page 12. Shift F5, page 9. Page 6. Page 10. That is, this is just going to toggle through those last few places. So try those shortcuts out as some quick ways for you to navigate in your documents. Now, another way for us to go to is to work with what are called bookmarks. So give me a moment and I'm going to open up another file here. We have lots of different sample files. And about this time of year is when we might start thinking about traveling to someplace nice and warm. And in this case, then, we can create, and this could be in any document, we can create something called a bookmark. Now, a bookmark is something we might use for a reference. It might be something to create something called a cross-reference. But for instance, here, let's do Control G again. And if I go to bookmark, then let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and create that. You have too many different documents sometimes. Then in this case, I want to bookmark this as a table. So I'm going to select it. And in Word, I'll choose Insert. And here's bookmark. So just as the name implies, we're marking a place in our document. So think about those larger documents that you have. They might be contracts. They might be something legal. Maybe it's an operating procedures for your business or other types of processes. And so with that, I could bookmark this and maybe I'll call it just simply rooms. And I can add that. So we want it to be descriptive enough that I would know in that document what that was. I could bookmark other locations as well, but let me see, I'll go move to the end of the document. And once again, Control G, we'll go to bookmark. And I could have multiple bookmarks here. In this case, I have that one room. So I'll go to it and it will take me right there. So bookmarks can also be as a cross-reference. By cross-reference, I mean that's where you can say see table on page, and I could reference the page where this was by having a bookmark for it. But it also becomes a handy way to move to a specific place. So consider working with that go-to option, Control G or F5, as one way for you to be able to move around. Now I'm going to move around under the View tab here and choose Switch Windows. And with Switch Windows, and this gives me the option to move to multiple documents that are currently open. One of the key things we have in Word is that we want to be able to select, then do, meaning we're selecting to format, to copy, to move, even to delete. And with that, there's lots of different selection options. But the challenge that we can have, especially with a larger document, is that if we just simply start selecting, now we can run into what I call the runaway mouse, where we just go, well, wait, well, that's too much. That's not enough. I'm not where I want. And we're not able to control that. That's a very common thing that we have in Word. One of the keys there is to be able to simply hold down the Shift key. Now, if I hold down Shift, keep it held down, I can use my down arrow key, my up arrow key, any of my directional keys, even page down, to be able to control how much I'm highlighting. So I'm still holding Shift until I've highlighted what I want. Now, additionally here, I could also hold Shift and click with my mouse without having to drag. So that becomes another way for you to be able to easily select. So how would that help you to feel like you have a little bit more control over what you're highlighting? Another way to select is to move to what we might think of as just the left-hand margin. It's technically called the selection bar, but I can click once and now I have my entire line. Or what if I want an entire sentence? Well, instead of having to drag for that, all I need to do is move anywhere into the sentence and hold Control and click. There we go. And so Control click highlights that whole sentence, whether it's something we want to cut and move or perhaps format that, but we don't have to drag our mouse to try to get that. And it's selecting as well that blank after the period. Or we can move to the left of a paragraph and double click. That would highlight the entire paragraph, regardless of how long it is or how many sentences might be in it. Now, if you really wanted to get carried away, you move to that selection bar and triple click. 1, 2, 3. Now the entire document is selected. That is also available by doing Control A. So those are all ways to be able to select more effectively in your documents and ways for you to be able to work with your text more easily. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. We're going to continue looking at how we can customize and automate in Word. But I do encourage you, if you have questions about anything you see, please drop those into chat. Or if you'd like to just direct it to, and you can just direct it to me specifically, or you can also take advantage of the Zoom Q&A feature. So definitely take advantage of those as opportunities to share questions about what you see. And if it's something that, I'll do my best to make sure that that gets covered for you. One of the other ways for us to be able to save time in Word is by leveraging what's called the Quick Access Toolbar. And you may have worked with this, whether it's in Word or perhaps programs like Excel or even Outlook. The features remain basically the same from one program to another. So once you start applying it, then you can really save yourself a lot of time. The idea being that instead of having to move into different views through the ribbon and different features, that you can add your most frequently used features right to the Quick Access Toolbar. So how does this work? Well, there's 3 different ways for us to customize the Quick Access Toolbar. But first of all, where is it? It's sitting right above the ribbon here. And right now we see just a few options: save and undo and redo. Well, there's a lot more that we could add to this. So what we're going to do with this is go to the drop down arrow to the right-hand side. Here you're going to see a number of file management options. And I encourage you, if it works for your work setup, launch Word and try some of these things. And so with us, there's some file management options like new and open, maybe a quick print, pre-print preview. And so these are some actions that we're automatically adding to the Quick Access Toolbar. But you can see that it won't take very long here before this starts to get crowded by the title bar with the file name, the search, and even the Windows management. So my recommendation is, whether it's just a few actions or you have a lot here, show this below the ribbon. Move your Quick Access Toolbar below the ribbon. How we do that is in this drop-down arrow. Here is show below the ribbon. So notice how much that improves it. First of all, I think these are much more visual, much easier to see. And we have the entire width. Now, you don't need to necessarily go that far with it, but you have room and space to be able to continue customizing. So the drop-down arrow is the first of the 3 ways. The second is to find actions that you're using frequently. Now, one of the things you may know about Word, but it's important to apply, is to work with show hide. So show hide, especially when you're editing longer documents, is something you should be displaying. And we talked a little bit more about the formatting earlier. So if I have show hide enabled, what this does is it shows you where you have those hard returns, that is those paragraph marks. And so when you hit enter, then this will carry us forward. So for instance, hitting enter here moves me down to the next paragraph, and it's taking forward the same formatting that this paragraph had, in this case, where there's some spacing after. But if I change this to be centered, for instance, now if I hit enter, I'm copying forward that formatting. It's much easier, however, to edit a document and to understand how things are formatted by having show hide on. Because in addition to having those hard returns, what we also see are these little dots between where we have spaces. And this is also where you can see if you're editing someone else's, did they use tabs or indent, or did they just space to move something over? It gives us a lot more information. So I want to have that option to show hide on my quick access toolbar. And I'm going to do that by just hovering over that tool. I'll right click and left click on add to quick access toolbar. And there it is. So now it doesn't matter where I am in working with this document. I still have this option to turn it on and off. Now, I recommend with any longer documents that you do, in fact, keep it enabled. But if you do want to turn it off, or you find that it's getting in the way for some of your work, you can certainly toggle it back off. Some other actions that I recommend you add are different ways to view your document. So this is under the View tab. And here we have one page, multiple pages, page width. And so these would all be good options to add. You could also add 100% for 100%, for instance. So I'll right click here, add to quick access toolbar, right click, left click, add to quick access toolbar. Notice how each one of these is being added. Right click on page width, left click, add to quick access toolbar. I can add 100% to that. But the nice thing about something, so here's my multiple pages. I can go to page width, which means it zooms it in as much as would fit on my screen. And that gives me a lot more flexibility to working with the text. Additionally, I shared with you before this option to switch windows. Well, I really like that in all of my applications when I have more than one file open. For instance, when I'm copying and pasting from one document to another. So I'll right click, left click on add to quick access toolbar. I can certainly use my taskbar for that, but now this makes it much handier. So that's a second way for us to customize the quick access toolbar. A third way is to move to this drop-down arrow, because there might be features that aren't found on the ribbon, or you might want to rearrange these tools. So in this case, I'll click on this drop-down arrow, and near the bottom is more commands. So what we see here, this is the equivalent of going to File, Options, and Quick Access Toolbar. On the right-hand side, these are the tools that we currently have. And for instance, you might want to rearrange some of these things, such as moving those file management tools all together, like New and Open. Now I have my Save. Perhaps we want our print options to be together. So those are all things where I can simply select it and click the up or down arrow to rearrange these in a logical sequence. Well, what if I want to add something else to that? Well, on the left-hand side here, we have a list of commands. Right now we're seeing popular commands. And in this, then we can find things that we want. In this case, I'm looking for save as. So I'll pick Save As and choose Add. Now I could also double click on that. And I'll move that up a little bit so it's right after Save. And that is another action that can save us a lot of time because it's probably something that you use on a regular basis, maybe every day. Another one that I find I use quite a bit is to close. And so once again, we can add that, but that is found not under popular commands, and I can find it on all commands. So in this dropdown, you'll see that our commands are divided by lots of different primary options. And so we do have things from the file tab, for instance. So here's close file. That would be one way to find it. Or we could find it under all commands. So here's my close file. And I could add that. And I want to add it over here. So I'm going to get approximately where I want to target, double click. And now I have that to close the file. So just as any other close action, what this does is it will still prompt you to close if you want to save the changes. So you aren't skipping over that part of it. It's just adding it to make it faster than having to go to File, Close. Once you have this toolbar set up the way you want, go ahead and choose OK. I'm often asked if this is something you have to repeat. Is it part of this document or is it part of Word? And it is part of Word, which means that the other documents we look at will also have them. So for instance, if I switch over to a different document, you'll see that this also has that quick access toolbar. So we're not running into a situation where it's specific to the document. And when you close out a Word, it will be there the next time you come back in. So that's one of the other things that can be helpful to know. You can export the quick access toolbar so other people could leverage your hard work, or you could import someone else's. Or for instance, if you had two computers and you wanted to transfer it to another one you were working with. So that is a feature that you would find if you went back to this More Commands. And you'll see in the corner here the option to import or export that customization. So quick access toolbar, I recommend that you explore how you can leverage that to make the most of these options in Microsoft Word. Another feature or other option you might want to consider is also found under View. And this is something called the ruler. And so with us under View and Ruler, this is helpful so that especially if you have text where you have a lot of indents, tabs, bullets, numbered list, then it will help you in those situations so that you can really see, for instance, where are your margins. So the margins in this case are the gray area versus the white, which is the document portion. And so that ruler is giving me a little bit more of that information. That means that, for instance, if I hit enter here and decide that I want to do a numbered list, notice how it will show me how this is indented. So here's my first line marker. And then here's the left indent for the balance of that text. But that's without the ruler enabled, you don't get that kind of information. And so these are all things that are designed to make it easier for you. Now, in this case, unlike what I mentioned with the quick access toolbar, because I have multiple files open, the ruler itself is not displayed in those files because they were opened before we enabled the ruler. But if I close out of Word and come back in, then the ruler will be part of that. So once again, that's a toggle that you can turn on or off under the View tab. And it's also something that you are able to turn on and off per individual documents. Hopefully that's giving you some options for how you can customize and create a better environment for you as you're working in Microsoft Word. Once again, feel free to jump in and share your comments and questions. in chat or using the Zoom Q&A feature. I want this to be valuable for you, and let me know how I can help support you. We're going to continue looking at shortcuts, automation features, just different tools that will help you to save time in Microsoft Word. And certainly one of those is when we have a situation where we have text that really doesn't flow exactly like we want. So let's first of all enable a few things for this text. First, I'll use that show high so I can see exactly what's happening in that text and working with that. So I have that show hide. Now, with this text, there are some ways that we can work with it more effectively. So one of the challenges is that when you have things like dates, here we have a date, or someone's name, especially if that person has a title or other types of information. If you want it, let's say I want to put her name on the same line. Well, if I hit enter, the problem is that I've actually created a new paragraph. And that paragraph may have its own properties to it. For this particular paragraph, what's happened, and we can find this in a lot of different ways, but I can see under layout that it actually has what's called spacing after. So it doesn't look like it's part of that original paragraph anymore. So that becomes a little bit of a problem in terms of working with that. Instead, we have some different tools that will help us to work with it more effectively. Here's one option, and it's called a non-breaking space. So the same thing here is with the date. I really want to glue this date together. I want it to stay together without having to create or force a new paragraph. So what I'll do here is I'm going to delete where we have those spaces. So we'll do that, delete the space, then Control, Shift, Spacebar. Now notice with the show hide enabled, now we see a little bit different character. That is a non-breaking space. It looks like a degree symbol. Control, Shift, Spacebar. So now the text will wrap because this has been told this is basically all glued or must stay together. That's how easy it is. And if the text changes, then it doesn't matter if we don't need it, it's not going to impact this or be a problem. It's just simply that this text will stay together. But if I need it, or if we continue to add content to this, then that non-breaking space is gluing that together. Something that's a little less common, but could still come into play, would be the non-breaking hyphen. So as you might guess, the previous one was Control Shift Space. This is Control Shift hyphen, Control Shift hyphen. And I'm just deleting the standard hyphen, Control Shift hyphen. Now you might see that and think, well, now that I've changed the look of it, but if I turn off the show hide, it just looks like a standard hyphen. All I'm doing is gluing it together once again so it stays together on the same line. So when the wrap text is, and when we have the text wrapping in Word, then this is going to stay together and create a better look. We also have ways to create non-breaking paragraphs and lines. So you can see this challenge too. Let's say this is a title, but because it's so long, if I just put a hard return in it, now I have a problem because I get that space after. And it all depends upon how the paragraph is formatted. Instead of a hard return, what I'm going to do is do a Shift Enter. So an enter gives me a new line. Shift Enter is a new line, same paragraph. Shift Enter, new line, same paragraph. Notice what happens here. I have this visual symbol that is indicating this is a new line. And this is why I'm recommending that you have that show hide enabled, because it's giving you so much information about the content, whether you're the one that created it or someone else did. And hopefully you're finding some value in, and even if you, I hope you have lots of tips that you get from this session, but even one or two can be a big time saver for you and make things so much easier as well. We also have some other challenges sometimes in our text, and that is with how text breaks across pages. Now, if I switch back over, let's go to that all about chocolate, for instance. If I wanted to create a page break, or if I wanted something to move to the next line, what we don't want to do necessarily is to say, hit enter, 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 enter. So hopefully you're not doing that. But if you are, then it's good to know. And I'll just share with you real quickly here. If I want to force that to a new line, that is Control Enter. Don't hit the hard return, just Control Enter. And now we have a page break. We're saying I want that on a new page. And this is why the show hide is so helpful, because if I turn that off, I don't see that there was a page break there. But that tells me a lot about the structure of the document. Let's go back to that other example. In this case, I have text where there's a heading that is on one page and then the text on the next. Now, there's a concept in Word that's called widows and orphans. And that sounds kind of sad, but what it really means is that Word is designed so that one line of text will not be on a page all by itself. And so what will happen is that Word may sometimes, the text might push or move to the next page, so that a line of text, either at the very beginning of a paragraph or at the very end of a paragraph, will not be all by itself. So Word can do that automatically, but it isn't something you have to enable. But we also have this issue where, in this case, this is a separate paragraph, but I really don't want it just hanging out at the bottom of the page. And to put in a page break might be a problem, because perhaps the text will be edited so that this is no longer near the bottom of the page. So here's the way that we can fix it. Simply move to that text, whether it's a title or anything else you want to have it glued to the next line. I'll right click and go to paragraph. Now there's other ways I could get to the paragraph formatting, but this is one way. So I come into paragraph formatting, and you may be familiar with this dialog box. This is where we can often make corrections to spacing, indentation, and other formatting. But there's another dialog box. There's another tab here, and this is line and page breaks. So notice here, this pagination, widow, orphan, control, that is the default in Word, but I want this to keep with next. So I'm going to just simply select it, meaning keep this line with this paragraph with the next one, and choose OK. And notice how it automatically moves forward. It also gets this little indicator in Word that has that formatting. So whatever happens with this text, these two will stay together. Now, another way that this can also come into play is where we might have something where we want to keep certain text together. Now that means then that we don't want the text, for instance, to break in the middle of a paragraph. So let's see what happens here. If for instance, I hit a hard return, and I'm not saying hit a hard return, it's just that as text might be added, then notice what will happen here. That is, this paragraph is being split from one page to another, because there's 2 lines at the top, 2 lines at the bottom, or whatever it might be, but we don't have that widow orphan issue. But this might seem a little awkward, where I really don't want that idea. Instead, I want to keep that text together. So here's what we do. First of all, I might want to format this one to say keep with next. So I'll select that. But I also will click anywhere in this paragraph. I don't have to select the whole paragraph. Right click paragraph. And by the way, I could select more than one paragraph for this to be done and say keep lines together, meaning keep the lines in that paragraph together on one page. And now we have that formatting. So we don't want to apply, of course, to the same whole document. It could be to multiple paragraphs, but this gives you a much more refined way of managing these kinds of breaks rather than having to force in hard returns and page breaks and all these things that you often have to delete later or create kind of an end result that you're just really not that happy with, but it's what you have. So hopefully that gives you another tip that's helpful for you. And let's look at some others. Now here we have just a kind of a fun, simple document, only has 5 pages to it, but it's one example where we might have some formatting that we would like to be able to modify in some way. So for instance, let's say that I have decided that I'd like to change the way that these headings look. So this particular heading here, I'm going to change the color of it. I'll make it green, make it centered, and maybe I no longer want italics, but I'd like it to be bigger. Now that I've done that, that would mean one thing, that I'd have to manually change all the others. We also could use styles, which is something I would recommend, but in this case, it's a pretty small document, so you may not want to bother with that, but I'll share with you briefly a little demonstration of styles, and then we'll look at some other automation and document tricks. So for this one, the other solution is, rather than doing completely manual, is something called Format Painter. So I'll highlight the good stuff, meaning I'm going to highlight the text, and the text could be a bulleted list, a numbered list, a heading. I'm going to highlight what has the appearance that I like. Come up to the ribbon, and here is the paintbrush, the Format Painter. You'll notice it has a keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-C if I want. I'll click it once. Now my mouse is a paintbrush. So I'll click into another heading, and I've painted the formatting, not the content, the formatting. But what if I want to use it more than once, because we've got multiple headings that we want to change? Well, go back to the paintbrush, and it's okay if you go, oh, wow, I wish I knew that last week. I'm going to double click on this. So double clicking is going to hold it in place. Now I'll drag across this heading and this one, and I think that takes care of all the headings that I need to fix. Yep. And now I can either escape or click on it again, and I've canceled it. But now they've all have the same formatting. So the Format Painter, which also works in Excel, is something that you can use to copy formatting, to get consistent formatting. So we did talk more about styles when we were in the long documents session. So that's something that where we have a few more options for that. That is something certainly that I'll give you a quick little introduction to it, but with styles, we can do certainly much more. So the idea of styles, so here again, and notice how I'm already using my quick access toolbar to change my views, to move around. So the very quick couple minute session on styles. In Word, styles is a way to store formatting that you can use over and over again. There are some built-in styles like normal. you'll notice I'm in the text here, and in the home ribbon, here's the group for styles. Here is normal. So that's the default of how the normal text looks when you start with a blank document. And you can then reformat what that normal looks, either manually or through the styles feature. But styles also have some standard names like heading 1 and heading 2. These are built in, and we can also change the way that they look. So let's look at that same idea. Here I have a main heading, and it's for sailing. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that a little bit better. And I'll format this the way that I'd like to. That is, I'll make it, well, maybe we make it blue because we're talking about water, and I'll make it italics. I just want to change it enough so that you can see the contrast for it. So this is the way I like those main headings to look. With it highlighted, I'll move up to my styles group, and here's heading 1, but I can always click in here if I want to find them. And I'll right click and say update heading 1 to match selection. So we're able to build a style this way. Now, with that, there's multiple ways we can go in and work with styles. So as I mentioned, we covered that in our long documents course, but also here I have assigned this formatting to heading 1. Now, if I move down to and select another heading, I can also then make that heading 1. And so that's the idea in working with our styles. We can move to any others, and we can even assign shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts to these headings. But by having them be styles, especially when you have long documents, it might not be about color formatting. It might be that there's just a certain appearance, or you have a certain way you like to do indents. And those are the kinds of things you can then assign to style, so you can use them over and over and over again. And it saves you a tremendous amount of time, plus you have a lot of consistency with that. Hopefully that gives you ideas about how you can, especially with longer documents, really take advantage of styles. But let's wrap up with some tips in Word for automation. Some ways to really take advantage of the automation. And as I mentioned earlier, also fix some of the automation that may not be working so well for us. Please do share any questions you have in chat or in the Q&A feature in terms of how we can help you to really, work with Word more effectively. And certainly, hopefully this gives you a great start on that. So one of the things that we can run into, and here I'll simply start with a brand new blank document. And once again, taking advantage of that quick access toolbar, I'll move into a page width here. And you probably have seen and experienced something called autocorrect. You may not have known that's what it was called, but autocorrect. And what this means is that there are some built-in words. So for instance, if I type in TEH, meaning I meant to put in the, but I got the letters mixed up. If I space, hit enter, hit punctuation, anything that tells Microsoft Word that the word is done, then it will be automatically corrected. Now, if for some reason I didn't want that, I could press Control Z. Control Z is my undo. So that is autocorrect. And we have hundreds of built-in corrections. So things like the word accommodate. So I have words like this where sometimes I have to think, no, whether 2 M's, 2 C's, what is that correct? And now it's fixed. Now, the other thing that happens is capitalizes the first letter because it's the first letter of that line or a sentence. So that might be a great option for you. And where we start to run into problems with the autocorrect is certain things that we might have where, for instance, if you have lengthy outlines and all of a sudden you're typing it parenthesis, close paren, and now you get a copyright. That may not be what you want. As I mentioned, I can Control Z or undo for that, but that might be something that you don't want. So there's certain actions that you can change. Or if you do a lot of legal descriptions or anything that has a lot of fractions, it can be handy to type in 1/4 and get that changed to a symbol. But now if you have something that's much more specific, then that isn't being converted because there is an equivalent autocorrect, or in this case, auto formatting feature for it. So how do we work with these things? Well, we want to turn this off. We can go to File or simply customize it. Let me show you one more example because we're gonna turn something else off. Maybe you've noticed this if you wanted to do a numbered list. You type in a 1 period space and all of a sudden now you get this numbered list. Well, that might be great if that's your intention, but you might not want that. You might want to manually create that list. There might be some things that are so unique about it that it doesn't make sense for it to be an automatic list. So here's how we change it. We go to File, Options. If I can get there, there we go. And proofing. So think about proofing for spelling and for grammar, and definitely explore the editor, which by the way is over here on the Home tab on the right-hand side. The editor is basically where we do spelling and grammar, but it has some more built. It's been significantly improved over time. So autocorrect options. And here you can see then these autocorrect features. So I'm not suggesting that you turn off any of these, although if you didn't like that copyright, for instance, this is something that you could delete. And we can also add things that we might want. So, but first of all, let's look at that automation we don't like. So in this case, auto format as you type, this is where we're getting our fractions. This is why here's internet and network paths. This is what happens if you're putting in someone's email address or a website. And you can absolutely get this. So ordinals, that means if you type in, for instance, first or second, then the characters will become superscripted, and you might really like that. So don't have to change anything here. What I would recommend, though, is for most of you that you uncheck in this middle section here. Okay. So that means that it doesn't automatically give you those numbered lists, doesn't automatically give you bulleted lists, but you always have the option to enable those. It's just not something that it's correcting for you. And if you don't like those fractions, you can uncheck it. Now, for most people, you may also want to uncheck these options in this third section here. It depends upon how much you use Word and whether you are leveraging or using the tab or back tab feature for your indents. Before we leave this, I'll go back to autocorrect because this is another way we can leverage the autocorrect. So it's not just for spelling errors, but it can be a neat little shorthand. So for instance, if I wanted to, in this case, just type in, maybe it's an acronym for a company or a phrase, simply put in maybe 2 or 3 letters. That is, we don't want to have to type a lot for this to happen. Make them lowercase and make sure that they're not something that you would otherwise use. So in this case, I'll just type in MW. And what I want it to say when I type that is Microsoft Word rocks. So think about how, so if it's for your organization, you don't want to put the acronym in for it, but you might put in something similar to that. Maybe it's your initials. Maybe it's someone you work for and their initials, and you're always having to type in their titles and other content. So in this case, I'll go ahead and add this. Now I'll OK all the way. And let's try that. So it doesn't have to be at the beginning of a sentence. So that's why I'll type in MW space or enter. And in this case now I have that shorthand. So how can you leverage those autocorrect and auto format features to really get the most out of them? We're going to wrap up here with one more automation feature, and that is something called AutoText. Think about anything that you have that is boilerplate text. By that I mean it's something that you use frequently. Maybe it includes then a logo and an address. Maybe it's part of a legal language. Anything like that is something that would be really lend itself to AutoText. So maybe there's some standard paragraph. Now, with the AutoText, you can always edit once you've added it in. So don't assume that it's just something that isn't flexible with that. But it could be addresses, signatures, any kind of boilerplate text, logos, and things like that. Here's how it works. First of all, I'll highlight, just open up any document and select what you'd like to create as reusable text. That's the first part. Next, we'll find this under Insert. And over on the right-hand side, it's in the text group. So it's under Quick Parts. Okay. Go to Quick Parts, and here is AutoText. Oh, I already have it. Oh gosh, I forgot to delete that for you. I think I shared this in one of our previous sessions is why this came up. That's okay. So what I'm going to do with us is I'm going to delete this one so I can right click and go to Organize and Delete. And here I thought I got everything all organized for you, but we'll go ahead and try that again. So I'll go to Quick Parts, AutoText. And what I want to do in this case here is I'm going to save the selection to AutoText Gallery. And what I'll call this is CH address. Now, you could give it multiple words. What I recommend is coming up with something that is unique in the first 4 characters, because it makes it easier to replay it over and over again. So that's why I recommend that. And I'll show you how to replay here in a moment. And we could create a category. So you'll notice there's a category already created called contracts. We could just put it in general if you wanted to, those kinds of things. Or I could create a category that might be for marketing, let's say. You don't have to create categories, just know it's a way to organize these. And this is just a description that will show up when you hover over that. So I'll choose OK. Now, how can I use this? Well, I can move into an existing document or a new one. So in this case, I'll move into a new one. And let's see what happens if I start typing CH address. Notice how Word is going to prompt me. If this is what I want, press enter. And there it is. Now, maybe I don't know for sure, or maybe I want to, I'm not sure about bringing that in. What I can go to Insert, Quick Parts. If I'm not sure what I called it, I can go to AutoText, and here's that contract sig. So that's text I highlighted and stored as well. So now it's still all could be something that I edit. And I can add other text to it as well. So that's the idea of working with your AutoText. Another way for me to bring that in, I'll move to a new page here. Perhaps I type in CH address now, and you notice how it's prompting me, but even if I didn't accept that, I could hit the F3 function key, and that would be another way. So you type the name and hit F3. The idea with the AutoText is it's designed to save you time. And I hope you've discovered at least one tip that will do that for you. So I hope that you've learned any number of tips to save you time in Microsoft Word. These sessions, as you probably know, K-Squared Technologies offers these webinars once a month on the second Tuesday of each month. Coming up for the rest of the year, we have a session that is on the different options in Microsoft 365 and managing tasks. These include Planner, To Do, working with Outlook. That is, which are the ones that would work best for you? How can you take advantage of them? And so that's one of the things that we're going to explore. Then in December is a session for Excel, how to visually communicate data with charts and graphics. That's our schedule. Look for those emails. You've probably seen a few of them already, but make sure that you're registered. That way you're able to join us live and receive that training. And then coming up in 2022, we're going to continue with Excel and have a couple sessions on working with Excel functions. So those are the upcoming opportunities for learning. As always, it's always my pleasure to work with you. I hope that you've picked up multiple tips on working with Microsoft Word and that this will help you to be more productive. Continue letting us know how we can help you. Please reach out to K-Squared Technologies for your IT services and consulting to support you with your Microsoft technologies. Thanks for joining us today.